I'd now like to introduce Mike Waite from Surrey Wildlife Trust. Mike's has been responsible for the State of Nature report in the county, and we've asked him to sort of set the context, why nature recovery is important and what the opportunities might be. So over to you, Mike.
Right, yes, thank you everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Marissa, for that brilliant introduction there. I'm Mike Waite. My day job being Director of Research and Monitoring at the Surrey Wildlife Trust, but I'm also the present chair of the Surrey Nature Partnerships Biodiversity Working Group. And I'm going to tell you about the state of Surrey's nature in just 10 minutes. So Surrey, a veritable promised land, blessed with more woodland than any other English county, 13% of the UK's remaining lowland heathland. The beautiful Surrey Hills Protected Landscape, formerly known as the Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, and much more besides. Surrey's natural environment is arguably pivotal to its socio-economic attraction and unique selling proposition. But there's trouble in paradise. For the past half century, and especially in the past decade, as evidenced by these national state of nature reports, most recently last year, we have been constantly lamenting ongoing declines in wildlife and lost biodiversity as measured by the diminishing diversity and abundance of species. The Surrey Nature Partnership wanted to get more of a handle on this for the context of Surrey, so we published our own State of Nature in 2017. Why did we see a need for this? Well, as I say, clearly to provide a local context for the UK State of Nature reports, but also to serve wider biodiversity, nature recovery, advocacy opportunities to help prioritise our wildlife conservation strategy, and as a baseline for future reviews, because we plan to repeat this in 2027. So in brief, from a sample of 4,242 native Surrey species, we estimated that just under 12% were most likely already locally extinct, with a further 21% at various degrees of threat in our county. The National State of Nature report of 2016 estimated 2% national extinction, which shows how much more acute this is when looking at smaller regions, albeit in our case, from a particularly diverse one to start with. And this shows how the sample breaks down by wildlife grouping, plants and fungi, invertebrates, by far the largest, and vertebrates, including our most familiar wildlife, birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. How did we define local extinction? Well, by no species records for over 30 years is indicating probably extinct, for over 50 years presumed as definitely extinct, and for over 100 years clearly long gone. And these are some of the species we've lost from Surrey, with the dates of their last sighting. We see here the pine martin, last seen in 1934, the lady orchid in 1959, the mole cricket 1962, and more recently, the Duke of Burgundy fritillary, a lovely little butterfly, in 1987, and really recently, the water vole down the bottom there in 2008. But Surrey remains a very biodiverse county, despite these losses, and it is partly because of this intrinsic richness that the universally applying root causes of these losses have been felt so acutely here. This table is from the report and shows the proportion of the British native lists of various wildlife groups that is or was represented in Surrey. So 60% of our native British flora, 81% of butterflies, 78% of bees, ants and wasps, all the reptiles and amphibians, and 94% of mammals. Why so rich? Well, despite not having a coastline, this is totally down to a relatively high complexity in habitat types, which in turn is a result of our biogeography midway across the southeast, and the underlying highly contrasting geology, which from this slide you can see is also amazingly complex. But many of these species are now only just about clinging on. We've got the curlew and the wood white butterfly there. Here are some examples of species that now only occur in a single site, sometimes within a few square meters in the case of the narrow-leaved helleborine, a wonderful native orchid on the left. But such is the state of wildlife now in the UK, like us, many counties support the only remaining UK populations, as reduced from a former much wider range. In Surrey, this seems to involve mostly spiders and beetles, partly because of our large, though much reduced percentage of remaining lowland heathland. There's the lynx spider there at the top and the shining pot beetle top right. On the flip side, we're also seeing some welcome range expansions. The firecrest was a rare breeding bird in the UK, but in some parts of Surrey, it's now locally common. The wasp spider was formerly confined to the central south coast of England around the Solent, but since the millennium has spread right across the southern counties and now up as far as the Midlands. Most of this dynamism is driven by climate change, however. So why does nature matter? State of nature matter? Well, it does present a barometer on the overall health of the natural environment, on which we're all dependent for our health and well-being and the continuity of our present lifestyles and behaviour. Our natural environment is rapidly changing, ever more frequent extreme weather resulting from climate change being responsible for increasing regularity of flooding events and wildfires. Well, okay, but do we really need all this biodiversity to provide stability to the natural environment? Well, the simple answer is yes, because a less complex ecosystem is far more vulnerable to collapse. It is the fundamental complexity that supplies the resilience. But also, I finally want to show you how biodiversity relates to bioabundance. As it is the overall abundance, i.e. the sheer weight of essential biomass, that actually drive the ecological functioning of our planet. So just see how losses in biodiversity are symptomatic of the overall reduction in bioabundance. There we go. So that should be explanatory. So if you remember a headline finding from the State of Surrey's Nature, that around 12% of our native biodiversity is estimated to have been lost. Well, for that degree of loss in this albeit highly mottled equilateral triangle of a study area, we're looking at almost a quarter of total lost bioabundance. It's only very indicative, of course, totally indicative, but it just shows you. All that lost stored carbon, soil fertility, waste decomposition, and nutrient recycling, oxygen generation, cross-pollination, the list goes on. So nature-based solutions are the future, and one very good reason to reverse biodiversity losses and begin nature's recovery. And this can involve the reintroduction of certain keystone species, i.e. those that punch above their weight as the primary drivers of their ecosystems, like the beaver, as part of the solution of the natural flood management solution to ever worsening climate change impacts, like flash flooding. So, very brief, very rapid, but that's the State of Surrey's Nature, and that's me. Thank you.